Morning, everybody. Thanks for having me. My talk I entitled Taking Stock and Taking Action because I do think we're at an inflection point here as it relates to the housing challenge and the possibility for housing solutions. As my biography suggests, I've been at this for quite a long time, and I'll say, there's a lot of people who have been involved in this work, have seen the writing on the wall for many years, but quite frankly, really always bumped up against this kind of dynamic where just not enough people were facing the crisis to really care that much about it. We are at a very different point at this stage in the game. I was talking to a colleague of mine a couple weeks ago, and he quoted to me Peter Drucker quote. He's a management specialist of all things here, but culture eats strategy for breakfast. And kind of referring to this frustration of just knowing what needs to be done, but not being able to implement it because the culture denies it. It is frustrating, when we confront these kind of established, obsessions, I guess I would say, with free market principles, with, this notion of individuality and independence, that really challenges us to carry out things that seem purposeful, beneficial, are going to get us to a better place. I guess I feel like, culture is dynamic. And so to suggest that we're stuck because our culture denies it feels to me like, yeah, maybe. But culture is dynamic because it comes into conflict with need and reality. Culture changes. And quite frankly, I think that there's roots, there's things embedded in our culture that we can use to our advantage. So this shirt is not just because I'm a John Fetterman supporter. Raised on the streets. I was born in the 70s, raised on Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers and all these things. They were just constantly reinforcing this notion of community, right? The need and the importance of people getting together, relying on each other, understanding each other. And I think that's a real opportunity that we can take advantage of. So next slide is a bit of a laundry list of problems. That's how you might see it up front here. I put it in front of you in part to shock you into kind of a sense of the scope of the problem we're dealing with, but also to suggest that the scope of the problem is so comprehensive that we really don't have an option but to change the direction that we're taking. So again, a lot of these stats are probably known to you. I'm putting them together as a package to make the point. So in 2019, there were 28,000 HRM households in core housing need. Because of the inflation in housing costs, that number is certainly far higher today. There's, as of last week, 1,048 actively homeless people in HRM, and that's double what it was last year, 4 times higher than it was 3 years ago. Inflation is, at not record highs, but extremely high, and that especially relates to housing. A 1-bedroom apartment in 2018 costs about $900 in HRM. Today, that's about $1,500 across the board, but if that 1-bedroom is available, empty, it's $2,000. So the price of a 1-bedroom has doubled in 3 years. Meanwhile, incomes have not kept pace. So if you look at median incomes for Halifax, 50% of the working population can't afford the housing that's out there, can't afford the average rental rate, can't afford the average home purchase cost of about $560,000. That is fundamentally problematic. 50% of our population can't access housing that they can afford. Puts them in a compromised position in the immediate term, puts the entire economy in a compromised position in the long term. Racialized communities are chronically disadvantaged. We talk about this a lot, but I ran into a statistic the other day that really hammers this home. If racialized communities in Canada owned housing at the same rate as non-racialized communities, over the course of the last 3 years when we've seen housing prices spike, they would have gained cumulatively $100 billion worth of wealth. So they have been denied systematically through policy and prejudice the opportunity to access the housing market and are at a severe disadvantage. We have a radically inadequate supply of housing. Canada has the lowest housing rate per population of any G7 country. In Nova Scotia right now, estimated that we need 27,000 units to meet current demand, and we'll need 70,000 units by 2030. We are currently losing more units, affordable units, than we're gaining, about 3 to 7 affordable units for every one we build across Canada. And we are in a very challenging point of view from the standpoint of labor. We don't have nearly the tradespeople to build the housing we need. And Carrie and I, work for the Home Building and Renovation Sector Council. Our job is to find people to work in this industry. Because of the stigma, because of certain other challenges, we are really struggling to find the people to do this work. So there is no immediate solution to, as far as building new housing to meet the need. It's just not in front of us right now. It won't be there for several years. We need to find other opportunities. I guess it's just important to say the private sector is maxed out. Because they're maxed out with the opportunities in front of them, they're picking the most lucrative opportunities by and large. They're building the stuff that's going to make them the most money. So for those who need affordable housing, there's just really not that much being done. Nonprofit sector, because of that growth in homelessness and other needs, they are inundated. Their caseloads have doubled, tripled, quadrupled. They have no capacity left to take on any more than they're already doing. All of this really gets back to the point of the compromises that we're experiencing, both on an individual level, health, well-being, anxiety, all these types of things that people are facing when they're in the midst of a housing crisis. But again, at a societal level, we are seeing the kind of economic foundations of this country undermined. In a couple generations, if we just see all these people being bankrupted by housing costs, the country's going to have to deal with that, and it's not going to be a pretty picture, right? For generations now, we've relied on housing equity as the basis of people's kind of financial future. It's not available to people anymore. We need another plan. So conventional approaches won't cut it for all sorts of reasons. Just I guess a couple other reasons to point out. Environmentally, our housing is highly inefficient. We have one of the highest carbon footprints per housing unit in any place in the world. The housing costs continue to grow beyond people's means, so it is time for a change. One other thing I guess I'll point out I missed in the last one is the isolation factor. So people say form follows function. I would say function follows form. We built a kind of infrastructure that isolates people. And by isolating people, we leave them alone. Leaving them alone puts them in a situation where they experience loneliness, which leads to mental health problems, which leads to things like, I'm somewhat surprised to hear it, but cardiac arrest, stroke, all sorts of diseases, and results in about 45,000 deaths a year in Canada. It's equivalent to smoking. Not only that, I think in the bigger picture, the issue is that as somebody experiences isolation and loneliness, the part of the brain that serves a social function starts to degrade. So the hippocampus starts to shrink, degrade, and leaves somebody actually incapable of socializing, of cooperating, of working on collective action. So we're kind of getting further away from a solution the more we double down on these kind of conventional approaches we pursued over the past. So all sorts of reasons to change direction. I'm just going to highlight quickly what United Way is doing in order not only to address the housing issue, but I think to kind of start to instill a different ethic, a different set of values in the culture. So we're working on a community land trust project for HRM. For those of you who don't know, community land trusts are nonprofit organizations, own and manage land according to community interests. That's the fundamental principle. You're bringing people into the process, you're giving them a voice, you're giving them a role, you're giving them a place in society where they can take an active part in their futures. The idea really fundamentally is to address the affordability issue. So by taking that property out of the market, holding it legally in perpetuity, you reduce the inflationary pressures, you can control costs over time and give people a more stable place to call home and a more stability in terms of creating community. They're place-based, they reflect the character of the community, and they're not just about housing. If we were just going out and building more affordable housing, we wouldn't be completing the full scope of what we're trying to accomplish. We want to build housing in communities that serve people and give them opportunities for well-being, opportunity, that type of thing. I think I'm close to done, so I'm just going to skip to the next one. We've done a lot of consultation with people on this project, and we've come to some design decisions about what we're going to do. It is a bit of a compromise as far as historic approaches to CLTs, but we're operating at a municipal scale. We need to do that because, as somebody mentioned earlier, building housing is an expensive, complicated process, and we need the capacity to do it. But we want to do that in a way that's representative, so our board will involve community members, residents, professionals. We want to be making the right decisions, create a sustainable organization, but do it in a way that's really going to serve people in the long run and isn't just focused on efficiencies and maximizing profit, obviously. It's going to be equity-driven. As much as we're inclusive and we'll be serving everybody, we want to use the resources to ensure that some of those historic challenges related to marginalization are addressed. We're actively using the resources of the Land Trust to address those. We need to be sustainable from a financial point of view, but also from an environmental point of view. And the biggest principle here is community-driven. So we've done a lot of engagement up to this point, but that'll be an ongoing principle as we move forward. Community is always going to be a part of the decisions and the process in determining what we do and how we do it. Thanks.